The day I walked into that boardroom and saw my own presentation on the screen with someone else's name on it, I knew my life was about to change forever. Hey everyone, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong somewhere because of how you looked, this story is going to hit different. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know this reaches people who need to hear it. Let me take you back to 3 months earlier, when I thought landing my dream job at Sterling & Associates was the beginning of my fairy tale. I'm Sloane Winters, and I moved to Boston from London 2 years ago with nothing but my marketing degree, a suitcase full of hopes, and the kind of optimism that only comes from believing the world is fair. I should have known better. The morning of my interview, I stood in front of my tiny apartment mirror, adjusting my blazer for the 100th time. My reflection stared back, a 26-year-old black woman with natural hair that I'd spent an hour perfecting into what I hoped looked professional enough for corporate America. "You've got this, Sloane," I whispered to myself. "Your portfolio speaks for itself." Sterling & Associates was the kind of prestigious marketing firm that handled campaigns for Fortune 500 companies. Getting an interview there felt like winning the lottery. I'd applied for the senior marketing strategist position, a role I was overqualified for, but in a new country, you take what you can get. The building towered over downtown Boston like a glass monument to success. As I walked through the marble lobby, I caught a few stares. Not unusual, I'd grown accustomed to being one of the few black faces in professional spaces. What I hadn't grown accustomed to was the weight of those stares, the way they seemed to question my very presence. Sloane Winters. The receptionist, a blonde woman with perfectly straight teeth, looked me up and down. "You're here for the marketing position." "Yes, that's right." Her smile faltered just slightly. "Oh, I see. Well, take the elevator to the 15th floor. If you're following this story, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this unfolds." The interview was conducted by 3 people: Harrison Mitchell, the department head, Lila Pemberton, a senior strategist, and Marcus Thompson, who I later learned was the only other black employee in the department. Harrison was exactly what you'd expect: mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to prove you belong anywhere. "So, Sloane," Harrison leaned back in his chair, "tell us about your experience in London." I launched into my prepared speech about my work at Cromwell Creative, the campaigns I'd led, the clients I'd retained. Lila took notes, occasionally raising an eyebrow. Marcus nodded encouragingly. "Impressive," Harrison said when I finished. "Though I have to ask, do you think you'll be able to adapt to how we do things here? American business culture can be quite different from what you might be used to." The question hung in the air like smoke. I knew what he was really asking, but I smiled anyway. "I've been living in Boston for 2 years now, Mr. Mitchell. I think I've adapted quite well." Lila leaned forward. "And you're comfortable working with diverse teams? Some of our clients can be particular about who they work with directly." My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "I've worked with clients from all backgrounds. Communication and results are what matter, wouldn't you agree?" Marcus jumped in. "Sloane's portfolio is exceptional. Her work on the Hartwell campaign shows exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need." I shot him a grateful look. At least someone in the room saw my work, not just my skin color. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to prove you belonged somewhere before you even started? I want to hear your stories. 2 weeks later, I got the call. I'd gotten the job. I celebrated that night with my roommate, Presley, a medical resident I'd met through a mutual friend from the UK. We ordered Thai food and drank cheap wine in our cramped apartment. "This is it, Prez," I said, raising my glass. "This is my chance to prove what I can do." "Just promise me something," she said, her expression serious. "Don't lose yourself trying to fit into their world." I laughed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just, be careful, Sloane. Some places, no matter how hard you work, they'll never see you as one of them." I should have listened to her. My first day at Sterling & Associates, I arrived 30 minutes early, dressed in my sharpest suit, armed with ideas and ready to impress. The office was a maze of glass-walled conference rooms and open workspaces that screamed expensive minimalism. Marcus met me at reception. "Welcome to the team, Sloane. Ready for the grand tour?" As we walked through the office, I noticed the demographics immediately. The leadership was predominantly white and male. The few people of color were mostly in support roles. Marcus and I were unicorns in this corporate safari. "Here's your desk," Marcus said, stopping at a workstation in the middle of the open floor. "Lila will be your direct supervisor, and you'll be working closely with our team on the Meridian Tech account." Meridian Tech. I'd researched them extensively, a rising tech company looking to rebrand and expand their market reach. This was exactly the kind of project I'd been dreaming of. Lila appeared beside us as if materialized from thin air. "Sloane. So glad to have you aboard. I hope you're ready to hit the ground running." "Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into the Meridian project." Something flickered across her face. Surprise? Irritation? "Oh, well, we'll start you off with some smaller accounts first. Get you acclimated to our processes." My heart sank a little, but I nodded. "Of course. Whatever the team needs." Pause this video and hit subscribe if you can already see where this is going. Trust me, it gets so much worse. The smaller accounts turned out to be administrative tasks disguised as marketing work. Data entry, meeting minutes, social media scheduling for clients I'd never heard of. For 3 weeks, I did the work without complaint, hoping it was just a probationary period. Meanwhile, I watched from my desk as the real work happened around me. Lila led strategy meetings for Meridian Tech that I wasn't invited to. Harrison praised campaign ideas in all-hands meetings that sounded remarkably similar to suggestions I'd made in casual conversations. It was during week 4 that I met Oliver Ashworth. I was working late, trying to finish a client report that should have taken half the time if I'd been given proper access to the necessary systems. The office was mostly empty except for the security lights and the soft hum of computers. Burning the midnight oil. I looked up to see a tall man with dark hair and kind eyes leaning against my cubicle wall. He was holding 2 cups of coffee. "Oliver Ashworth," he said, extending one of the cups. "I work in the London office. I'm here for the next few months helping with international client integration." Sloane Winters. I accepted the coffee gratefully. "And yes, just trying to catch up on some projects." "Catch up?" He raised an eyebrow. "You've only been here a month." Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. There was understanding there, familiarity with the struggle I was trying to hide. "How did you know?" "I make it a point to know who the new talent is. Plus, I might have heard Marcus mention he was excited to finally have someone with real international experience on the team." We talked for an hour that night. Oliver had grown up in Manchester, worked his way up through the London office, and understood what it was like to feel like an outsider in corporate spaces. He was funny, insightful, and treated me like a colleague rather than a curiosity. Drop a heart in the comments if you've ever met someone who just got it. You know what I mean. Over the next few weeks, Oliver became my anchor in the office. We'd grab coffee, discuss industry trends, and he'd share insights about clients that no one else bothered to tell me. For the first time since starting at Sterling & Associates, I felt like I was actually learning something. It was Oliver who first pointed out what I'd been too naive to see. "Sloane," he said one Friday evening as we walked to the parking garage together, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Have you noticed that you're doing a lot of work that's beneath your skill level?" I stopped walking. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've seen your portfolio. I know what you're capable of. But from what I can tell, Lila has you doing entry-level busy work." The words hit me like cold water. I thought it was just, paying my dues. Oliver's expression was gentle but serious. "Sloane, I've been in this industry for 8 years. New hires with your experience don't spend 2 months scheduling social media posts." That weekend, I couldn't stop thinking about what Oliver had said. I started paying closer attention to the work assignments, the meeting invitations that didn't come, the casual conversations that stopped when I approached. Smash that subscribe button if you think you know what's coming next, but I promise you, this story takes turns you won't see coming. The first major red flag came during Monday's team meeting. Harrison announced that the Meridian Tech account had been expanded. They loved our initial concepts and wanted to move forward with a full rebrand campaign. Lila, excellent work on the preliminary research, he said. And the consumer psychology insights were particularly impressive. I felt my blood turn to ice. Those insights, the consumer psychology analysis that had apparently impressed the client so much, were mine. I'd spent hours crafting that research, writing detailed reports that I'd submitted to Lila weeks ago. After the meeting, I cornered her in the break room. Lila, about the Meridian research. Oh yes, wasn't that great feedback from the client? She didn't even look up from her coffee. Sometimes team collaboration produces the best results, don't you think? Team collaboration. Well, you did some of the background legwork, and I developed it into the final strategy. That's how teamwork works, Sloane. I stood there, watching her walk away, and realized that Presley had been right. I was never going to be seen as one of them. That evening, Oliver found me still at my desk, staring at my computer screen. Rough day. They took my work, I said simply. The Meridian research. I did it, Lila presented it, and now she's getting credit for it. Oliver's jaw tightened. That's not okay. But what can I do? It's my word against hers, and who do you think they'll believe? Document everything, he said firmly. Every email, every report you submit, every idea you share. Create a paper trail. It was good advice. I started keeping meticulous records of my contributions, saving drafts of everything I worked on, and copying myself on emails that detailed my research and ideas. Comment below if you've ever had to protect yourself like this at work. It's exhausting, isn't it? Meanwhile, something was developing between Oliver and me. Our coffee meetings had become dinner conversations. Our professional discussions had become personal sharing sessions. He understood my frustration with the workplace dynamics, and I found myself looking forward to his texts, his insights, his presence. One evening, after a particularly difficult day where I'd watched another of my ideas get presented by someone else, Oliver suggested we get drinks after work. I need to ask you something, he said as we sat in a quiet wine bar downtown. Are you happy here? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you're brilliant, Sloane. You're wasted in that office. Have you considered that maybe Sterling and Associates isn't the right fit? You think I should quit? I think you should know your worth. That night, he walked me to my apartment. At my door, he turned to face me, his hand reaching up to touch my cheek. Sloane, he said softly, you deserve so much better than how they're treating you. When he kissed me, it felt like coming home and diving off a cliff at the same time. Hit that like button if you're rooting for Oliver. But guys, keep watching. This story is about to take a turn that's going to make you question everything. For a few weeks, everything felt manageable. I had Oliver as my ally and confidant, I was documenting my work religiously, and I'd started to develop strategies for getting my voice heard in meetings. I even managed to get myself invited to a client presentation for a smaller account. But then Harrison announced that Sterling and Associates had landed their biggest client ever. Pinnacle Industries, a multinational corporation looking for a complete brand overhaul. This is a career-defining project, he told the assembled team. I'm putting together our top strategists for this one. The team he announced included Lila, 2 senior associates, Marcus, and, to my surprise, Oliver. Wait, I said, raising my hand. I thought Oliver was only here temporarily from the London office. Harrison smiled. Change of plans. Oliver will be staying permanently and joining our team as Senior Strategic Director. My heart stopped. Oliver hadn't mentioned anything about staying permanently. In fact, just the night before, he'd talked about missing London and his plans to return after the project concluded. After the meeting, I pulled him aside. When were you going to tell me about the permanent position? Oliver looked uncomfortable. It just happened. Harrison made the offer yesterday. And you said yes without discussing it with me. Sloane, this is a huge opportunity. For you. What about us? I thought we were building something together. We are. This is good news. It means we can really explore what's between us. Something in his tone made me pause. There was an eagerness there that felt off, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. Pause and tell me in the comments, do you trust Oliver? Because I'm starting to think I shouldn't have. The Pinnacle Industries project consumed the office for the next month. Every day, I watched the chosen team members disappear into conference rooms for hours-long strategy sessions. Every day, I was left to handle the mundane tasks that kept me busy but invisible. It was Marcus who finally opened my eyes to what was really happening. "Sloane," he said, approaching my desk late one Thursday evening. "Can we talk?" We walked to the empty break room, and Marcus closed the door behind us. "I need to tell you something, but I need you to promise you'll be careful with this information." "What's going on?" "The Pinnacle project. I've been documenting some things that, well, they don't sit right with me." He pulled out his phone and showed me photos of whiteboards covered in strategy notes, campaign concepts, and consumer analysis. "Do any of these ideas look familiar to you?" My blood ran cold. There, written across multiple boards, were concepts I'd developed over the past 2 months. Research methodologies I'd suggested in casual conversations. Creative approaches I'd outlined in reports that were supposed to be filed for future reference. They're using my work. All of it. The entire Pinnacle strategy is built on research and insights you developed. But your name isn't on any of the official documentation. How is that possible? Marcus's expression was grim. "Because Oliver has been collecting your ideas and presenting them as collaborative efforts with Lila. He's been your inside source, Sloane, but not in the way you thought." The room spun around me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Oliver's permanent position came with a very specific assignment: extract every valuable idea from the new hire and integrate them into the team's work. He's been playing you from the beginning." Stop the video and hit subscribe because what happens next is going to blow your mind. I can't believe I was so blind. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone. Oliver had texted me 3 times asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I couldn't bring myself to respond. Presley found me on the couch at midnight, still in my work clothes, staring at nothing. "Sloane, what happened?" I told her everything. About the stolen ideas, about Marcus's revelation, about Oliver's deception. She listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each detail. "I'm going to kill him," she said when I finished. "I'm such an idiot. Present, I actually thought he cared about me." "You're not an idiot. You're a good person who assumed other people were good too. There's a difference." "What do I do now?" "You fight back." The next morning, I arrived at the office with a plan. I'd spent the night organizing every document, every email, every piece of evidence that proved my contributions to the Pinnacle project. I'd prepared a presentation that clearly outlined the timeline of my ideas and their implementation in the official strategy. I requested a meeting with Harrison, Lila, and Oliver for that afternoon. "I'm glad you asked for this meeting," Harrison said as we settled into his office. "We've been meaning to discuss your role moving forward." "Actually," I said, opening my laptop, "I wanted to discuss my role in the Pinnacle Industries project." The room went silent. I began my presentation, methodically laying out the evidence of my contributions. Email timestamps showing when I'd submitted research. Draft documents with my notes and insights. Photo documentation of my original brainstorming sessions. "As you can see," I said, reaching the final slide, "approximately 70% of the Pinnacle strategy originated from my work over the past 3 months." Lila was the first to speak. "Sloane, I think you're misunderstanding how collaborative processes work." "I understand collaboration," I interrupted. "What I don't understand is why my name appears nowhere on the official project documentation despite these contributions." Harrison leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "These are serious allegations, Sloane." "They're not allegations. They're facts, supported by documentation." Oliver finally spoke. "Sloane, I think you're taking this the wrong way. We've always valued your input." "My input?" The words came out sharper than I intended. Oliver, we both know this goes beyond input. Something passed between us then, a look that said everything about the game he'd been playing and the fact that I'd finally figured it out. Tell me in the comments, what would you do in this situation? Because what I did next changed everything. Harrison cleared his throat. I think we need some time to review this information. Let's reconvene on Monday. As we filed out of the office, Oliver caught my arm in the hallway. Sloane, we need to talk. Do we? You don't understand the position you're putting me in. I stared at him, finally seeing him clearly for the first time. The position I'm putting you in. Oliver, do you have any idea what position you've put me in? It doesn't have to be like this. We can work something out. Work something out. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean like how we worked out your permanent position using my ideas? His facade finally cracked. Sloane, you have to understand, this industry is brutal. Everyone uses whatever advantages they can get. And I was your advantage. You're talented, but you're also naive. You think merit alone gets you ahead in places like this? It doesn't. You need allies, connections, strategy. I needed trust. I needed honesty. I needed someone who saw me as more than a resource to exploit. That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't just going to fight for credit on the Pinnacle project. I was going to expose the entire system that made it possible. I started by reaching out to other employees, particularly people of color who'd worked at Sterling and Associates. What I discovered was a pattern of exploitation that went back years. Talented minorities were hired, their ideas harvested, and then they were either pushed out or kept in subordinate positions while others advanced using their work. Subscribe and share this video if you think more people need to hear stories like this, because it's not just happening at Sterling and Associates. Marcus agreed to help me document everything. We worked weekends, collecting testimonies, organizing evidence, building an airtight case not just against the Pinnacle project theft, but against the systemic discrimination that enabled it. Monday morning came, and I walked into Harrison's office with more than just my evidence about Pinnacle Industries. I had a comprehensive report detailing patterns of discrimination, intellectual property theft, and workplace harassment that painted a picture of a company culture built on exploitation. Harrison, I said, setting the bound report on his desk, I think you're going to want to read this before we discuss my role on the Pinnacle project. He flipped through the first few pages, his face growing pale. Sloane, what is this? It's 3 years of documented discrimination at Sterling and Associates. Employee testimonies, email evidence, and patterns of idea theft that go far beyond my situation. Lila leaned forward to look at the report. This is defamatory. Actually, I said, it's documented truth. And unless Sterling and Associates is prepared to address these issues immediately and comprehensively, it's going to become very public truth. Oliver had been silent through the exchange, but now he spoke up. Sloane, you don't want to do this. Think about your career. My career. I turned to face him. Oliver, my career was never the real concern here, was it? The real concern was how much value you could extract from me before I figured out the game. Harrison closed the report. What do you want, Sloane? I want my name on the Pinnacle project documentation. I want full credit for my contributions, not just there but on every project where my work has been appropriated. I want a public acknowledgement of the discrimination issues outlined in that report, and I want concrete steps taken to address them. And if we refuse? Then this report gets filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, shared with every major trade publication in our industry, and distributed to every current and former employee of Sterling and Associates. Hit that like button if you think I did the right thing, because the response I got was not what I expected. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Harrison picked up his phone. Legal. I need you in my office immediately. The next hour was a blur of lawyers, hushed conversations, and carefully worded questions about my intentions and the validity of my documentation. Through it all, I sat calmly, knowing that every piece of evidence I'd presented was solid. Finally, the head legal counsel, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Wells, addressed me directly. Ms. Winters, this is quite comprehensive. How long have you been collecting this information? Officially, 6 weeks. Unofficially, ever since I started working here and realized that something was deeply wrong with how people like me were being treated. People like you. People of color. Immigrants. Anyone who doesn't fit the traditional Sterling and Associates mold but brings valuable skills and perspectives. Patricia exchanged looks with Harrison. We'd like to propose a resolution. What they offered exceeded my expectations. Full credit on all projects where my work had been used. A promotion to Senior Strategic Director with a salary adjustment to match. A company-wide diversity and inclusion audit conducted by an outside firm. Mandatory anti-discrimination training for all employees. And a public statement acknowledging the need for systemic changes in workplace culture. But there was one more thing I wanted. I also want Oliver Ashworth's employment terminated. The room erupted. Oliver jumped to his feet. Sloane, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Oliver engaged in deliberate deception, emotional manipulation, and intellectual property theft. His actions weren't just professionally unethical, they were personally cruel. Harrison looked uncomfortable. Sloane, Oliver is a valuable employee. Oliver is a predator who uses personal relationships to exploit colleagues. If Sterling and Associates is serious about change, it starts with removing people who embody the worst aspects of the current culture. Comment below if you think I went too far, but honestly, I was just getting started. In the end, they agreed to all of my terms. Oliver was terminated immediately. I received a formal apology from the company leadership and a commitment to meaningful change. The story could have ended there. But it didn't. 2 days after the resolution was announced internally, I received a call from a journalist at the Boston Business Journal who'd heard rumors about major changes at Sterling and Associates. Someone had leaked the story. Ms. Winters, the reporter said, we understand there was a significant discrimination case resolved this week. Would you be willing to go on record about your experience? I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. Yes, I said. I think it's time people heard the whole truth. The article ran the following week with the headline, Sterling and Associates settles major discrimination case. Employee exposes years of idea theft and workplace exploitation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Current and former employees from other companies reached out to share similar experiences. Clients questioned their relationships with Sterling and Associates. Industry leaders called for broader examination of discrimination practices in marketing and advertising. Subscribe to this channel if you believe in speaking truth to power, because this story isn't over yet. But the most unexpected response came from Oliver. He showed up at my apartment building 3 weeks after the article was published, waiting by my car in the parking garage. Sloane, he called out as I approached. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Every instinct told me to keep walking, but something in his voice made me stop. 5 minutes, I said. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I need you to know that my feelings for you were real. I stared at him. Your feelings were real, but your actions were calculated manipulation. I got caught up in the politics of the situation. Harrison and Lila, they made it clear that my permanent position depended on bringing value to the team. When I saw how talented you were, I thought I could help both of us. By stealing my work and lying to me. By creating opportunities for collaboration that would showcase both of our skills. Oliver, do you even hear yourself? You're still trying to spin this as if you were helping me. He ran his hands through his hair, the composed professional facade completely gone. I know how it looks. I know I hurt you. But Sloane, I never meant for it to go that far. Which part? The part where you pretended to care about me, or the part where you built your career on my ideas? I did care about you. I do care about you. For a moment, I almost believed him. There was genuine pain in his eyes, real regret in his voice. But then I remembered all the late nights I'd spent questioning my own worth, All the times I'd watched my ideas presented by others while I remained invisible. Oliver, I said quietly, the saddest part about all of this is that if you had just been honest from the beginning, if you had approached me as a colleague and friend instead of a target, we could have built something real together. Your talents and mine, combined honestly, could have been amazing. It's not too late. Yes, it is. Because trust, once broken, doesn't just heal because someone realizes they made a mistake. And I'll never be able to look at you without remembering that when you had the choice between protecting me and protecting yourself, you chose yourself every single time. Drop a heart in the comments if you've ever had to walk away from someone who hurt you. It's one of the hardest and most important things you can do. I left him standing in that parking garage and never looked back. 6 months later, Sterling and Associates completed their diversity and inclusion audit. The findings were damning but led to real, systematic changes. 3 senior employees were terminated for discriminatory practices. The company implemented mentorship programs for underrepresented employees. They changed their hiring practices and compensation structures. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As for me, I stayed at Sterling and Associates for another year, helping to implement the changes and ensure they stuck. My work on the Pinnacle project, now properly credited, won 3 industry awards. I was promoted again, this time to Director of Strategic Innovation. But the most important change wasn't professional. It was personal. I learned that fighting for yourself isn't just about getting what you deserve, it's about changing systems so that the people who come after you don't have to fight the same battles. I learned that speaking truth to power is scary and difficult and sometimes costly, but it's also necessary. I learned that my background, my accent, my skin color, all the things that made me feel like an outsider, were actually my greatest strengths. They gave me perspective that others lacked, insights that came from understanding what it meant to be underestimated and overlooked. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I'm going to keep telling stories about fighting for what's right, even when it's hard. Today, I run my own marketing consultancy. Winters Creative focuses specifically on helping companies build authentic, inclusive brands and workplace cultures. Half of my team consists of talented people of color who might have been overlooked by traditional firms. We're small, but we're mighty, and our work speaks for itself. Oliver reached out once more, about a year ago, through LinkedIn. He'd taken a position with a firm in Chicago and wanted to reconnect professionally. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, are meant to stay that way. Marcus and I still keep in touch. He eventually left Sterling and Associates to join my company, and is now my director of operations. Presley finished her residency and is practicing emergency medicine in Boston. She never lets me forget that she warned me about corporate politics, but she also never stops being proud of how I handled it. The story I've told you today isn't unique. Across industries, talented people of color face similar challenges every single day. They have their ideas stolen, their contributions minimized, their worth questioned. The only thing that makes my story different is that I decided to fight back, and I had the documentation and support to make that fight effective. If this story resonated with you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me about a time you had to stand up for yourself, or a time you wish you had. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel because I'm going to keep telling these stories until they're no longer necessary. But here's the thing I want everyone watching this to understand. You don't have to wait for permission to value yourself. You don't have to wait for someone else to recognize your worth. You don't have to smile and accept less than you deserve just to fit in. Document your contributions. Know your value. Build alliances with people who see and support your potential. And when the time comes to fight for what's right, and it will come, be ready to fight not just for yourself, but for everyone who will walk through those doors after you. Because that's how change really happens. One person at a time, one story at a time, one act of courage at a time. Before you go, tell me in the comments, what's one thing you're going to do differently at work after hearing this story? And don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps me continue sharing these important stories with people who need to hear them. The day I walked into that boardroom and saw my work presented under someone else's name was the day I stopped being a victim and started being a warrior. It was the day I learned that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply refuse to be invisible. And if you're watching this and recognizing pieces of your own story in mine, I want you to know, you are not alone. You are not crazy. Your experiences are valid. Your contributions matter. And you have more power than you realize to change the systems that seek to diminish you. The question isn't whether you're strong enough to fight. The question is, what are you willing to fight for? Subscribe, share, and join the conversation. Because together, we can rewrite the rules.